Hey kiddos, today we're going to be talking about some basic operations with functions, and in particular, we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting with functions. Okay, so three things you want to make sure you remember when we're adding or subtracting functions. We want to line up the terms from greatest exponent to least. Regular numbers always go last, so we're used to that. If a term is missing, so like let's say you have x squared, x, and a regular number, but then the second function doesn't have an x or an x squared. You consider it a zero. Okay. To add or subtract functions, you just combine like terms. So what we're going to do is we're going to stack our functions just like how you would add or subtract in elementary school. Okay. So here's our first example. F of x is 5x minus 4. G of x is 2x plus 8. And what we're being asked to do is we're just going to add f of x plus g of x. So I like to stack these like we did in elementary school. So f of x I'm going to put up here. We have 5x minus 4. And then right underneath that, I'm going to line up the same terms. So I'm going to add 2x plus 8. Okay. Now, all we do is combine like terms going down. So we have 5 plus 2 would make 7. Now, important to remember, x and x do not combine to make x squared. They just move down. It's a placeholder. So we have 7 x's all together. And then negative 4 plus 8, the 8's bigger. So that's positive 4. And this is our final answer. Okay, so when you add those two functions together, essentially all you're doing is combining the x's together and combining the regular numbers together. Super simple. Now, with subtraction, things get a little bit more complicated, just a little bit, because we essentially have to distribute the negative sign. So it starts off the same. We're starting off with our f of x. So we have 5x minus 4. But now this says we're subtracting g of x. So when you subtract a function, you're basically adding the opposite. Okay, so think about g of x up here, and we're going to think of the opposite. So it would be negative 2x and negative 8. Now this is what we're going to write underneath. So negative 2x, because again, we're subtracting that function, and minus 8. And now we combine like terms again. So now I have 5x. I'm taking away 2 of them, so that gives me 3x. And then negative 4 and negative 8, we got to be careful. I have 4 negatives, and I'm taking away 8 more, so that's negative 12. Okay, and that's my final answer. Super easy peasy. So again, the only thing you have to remember when you are subtracting, we distribute that negative. So that's why I go off to the side and I write my new function, me subtracting, so I don't get confused when it comes to actually combining like terms. Okay, let's try another one. This is another subtraction problem. So again, whenever you see the subtraction, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to write down the first term. So 16x plus 10. But then for the second function, for g of x, I'm going to go up and I'm going to think about the opposite. So if I distributed a negative, I'm thinking the opposite of what's up here. So I would have positive 14x, because remember, a negative times a negative makes it positive, and minus 8. Okay, because a negative times plus would be minus 8. So this is the term that I'm going to write. This is the function I'm going to write underneath. So I have plus 14x and minus 8. And we just combine these together. So I have 16x plus 14x. That's going to give me 30x. And then I have 10 take away 8. The 10's bigger, so it's going to be positive 2. Okay. So again, when we do subtraction, that's the only real thing we have to worry about, is that we're distributing that negative to the second function, whatever that second function is. Okay. Next example, we're going to step it up a little bit. Now we have three terms. So we have x squareds included in both of these functions. We're going back to addition. So this is another simple one. Okay, f of x plus g of x. So my first function, f of x, is x squared plus 3x minus 5. Just write down f of x as it is. And then it says to add g of x. So I don't have to change anything here. I'm just going to write down the function as it is. So I line things up. 5x squared plus 4x and then minus 2. Okay. Now, one thing you can do on the top, you'll see it says x squared. There's no number in front, so you could put a 1 there just so you don't forget. And now we're just going to add down combining like terms. So 1 plus 5 is 6. The x squared just tags along. 3 plus 4 is 7. And the x tags along. And then negative 5 and negative 2. Think about this as combining negatives. So I have 5 negatives and then 2 more of them. That's negative 7. And this is going to be my final answer. Okay, so easy peasy so far. Now, so here on this problem, we want to be especially careful because if you look at the question, we have g of x and we're subtracting f of x this time. So we really want to be careful because we've switched the functions around, and so we want to make sure we put the correct ones in order. So we're putting g of x first, so I'm going to write that down normally. 5x squared plus 4x minus 2. And now I'm going to subtract f of x. So what I need to do is go up to f of x and write the opposite. So x squared becomes negative x squared. Positive 3x becomes negative 3x. And negative 5 becomes positive 5. Again, essentially, we're distributing that negative across the whole function. And then we're going to put that underneath. So we have negative x squared. Of course, if you want to, you can write the 1 so you don't forget. Minus 3x and positive 5. Okay, so now I just combine like terms going down as I did for every other problem. 5 take away 1, that gives me 4x squared. Positive 4x minus 3x is still positive 1x. You don't have to write the 1, but again, you can if you want. And then negative 2 plus 5, the 5 is bigger, so that becomes positive 3. And this is our final answer. So be careful, make sure you pay attention to the notation. If g comes first, make sure you put that on top. Okay, next example. This is one where you have to look very carefully at the terms or the functions before you add or subtract them. So if you look carefully, f of x has x squared, but no x, and g of x has no constant term. So when we line things up, we got to be really careful here. So f of x goes first, negative 4x squared. And because there's no middle term, I can either leave a space, so I could just leave a space and put minus 12 down here, or I could put plus 0. Okay, whatever makes the most sense to you. Okay, now for g of x, I have 8x squared. So for our last example, we have a different notation here. So we have f plus g of 3. Now, really what this means is we're going to be finding f of 3 plus g of 3. So f of 3 plus g of 3. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to evaluate each of these f of x and g of x at 3. So if I find f of 3, and that equals, so again, I plug in 3 right here for x. 5 times 3 is 15, minus 4, that's going to give me 11. And then the same thing over here for g of x, so g of 3. That means I'm going to plug in 3 right here for x. So I have 2 times 3 plus 8. Okay, and that gives me 6 plus 8, which is 14. Now that I have both those values, I just add them together.